Have you ever wondered, what if the prayer that billions repeat every day was never meant for the God who rules this world? What if Jesus' most sacred words, "Our Father, who art in heaven," were not a submission, but an act of defiance? A code whispered against an invisible ruler who has deceived humanity for millennia? For centuries, the Lord's Prayer has been taught as a simple formula of faith. But buried beneath those familiar words lies a hidden meaning that early Gnostics believed was revolutionary. They said Jesus wasn't praying to the creator of the material world. He was praying against him, against the demiurge, the false god who traps souls in illusion, power, and suffering. But if that's true, then who was the Father Jesus really addressing? And why did the Church erase every trace of that interpretation? Because to understand this secret is to realize that the world we live in, its systems, religions, and powers might all serve the wrong master. In this video, we will uncover what the earliest Gnostic Christians believed the Lord's Prayer truly meant, and how it became a coded act of spiritual rebellion. You will see how Jesus defied the God of this world, not with a sword, but with a few quiet words that could free the soul from his dominion. So stay with me until the end, because what you are about to hear may forever change how you pray and who you think is listening. If you feel that something about religion has always seemed off, that there's a deeper truth hiding beneath the surface, then subscribe now and join us on this journey of hidden revelations. Together, we'll recover what was forbidden, erased, and lost. When Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world," what did he really mean? To the Gnostics, the early seekers of hidden knowledge, this wasn't just a poetic phrase. It was a warning. They believed Jesus was revealing that the world itself is ruled by a false god, an entity of immense power and arrogance who pretends to be the creator. In the ancient Gnostic texts discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, this being is called the demiurge, the architect of the material universe, blind to the higher spiritual realms beyond his control. To most religions, this world's creation was an act of divine perfection, but to the Gnostics, it was a prison built by an imperfect God who mistook himself for the source of all light. They said he surrounded himself with lesser beings, the archons, who act as jailers of the human soul, feeding on ignorance, fear, and submission. In this vision, Jesus was not simply a teacher of morality or a prophet of obedience. He was a messenger from the realm of light, sent to awaken the divine spark buried within humanity, a spark older than the stars, trapped in flesh and forgetfulness. And this is where the true meaning of the Lord's Prayer begins to shift. When Jesus taught his disciples to say, "Our Father, who art in heaven," Gnostics believed he was pointing away from the false god who ruled earth and toward the hidden Father, the source beyond the material cosmos, the true origin of all spirit. This prayer was a rebellion disguised as devotion. Each line was a map out of captivity. Think about it. If there is a God of this world, one obsessed with control, punishment, and hierarchy, then perhaps the Father in heaven Jesus spoke of was not that being at all. Perhaps he was revealing another God entirely, one who does not demand worship but remembrance, one who does not punish but awakens. And yet, over centuries, this idea was erased. The Church declared the Gnostics heretics, burned their writings, and taught that there is only one creator. But deep in the desert, hidden in jars for almost 2,000 years, the forbidden text survived, whispering of a Jesus who defied the God of this world, not served him. It changes everything, because it means that the act of praying, something we thought was submission, could actually be a declaration of freedom. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that your prayers were reaching something beyond the ordinary, beyond the rules and punishments of religion, as if speaking to a presence that truly knows you? Most people repeat the Lord's Prayer automatically, as if its words were a routine chant. But what if each phrase is not a request, but a code, a step in a spiritual escape plan left by Jesus himself? To the early Gnostics, every line was a key, unlocking one gate of the invisible prison built by the demiurge. They saw in these words not a plea to a distant deity, but a remembrance of the true source beyond the stars, the Father of light that no church could name. Our Father, who art in heaven. Not the heaven of clouds or planets, but the invisible realm of spirit, untouched by the corruption of matter. Jesus begins by directing the soul's attention away from the world of the archons, lifting the gaze beyond the counterfeit heavens ruled by the false creator. The Father here is not Yahweh of wrath and jealousy, but the unnamable consciousness of pure love and unity. To pray this line is to remember where you truly come from. Hallowed be thy name. The Gnostics believed the name symbolized divine awareness itself, something sacred that cannot be spoken, only experienced. To hallow the name is to awaken the divine spark within you, the fragment of the true Father that lives in silence beneath the noise of the world. Thy kingdom come. But which kingdom? The Church interpreted this as the coming of God's rule on earth. The Gnostics saw it differently. They said Jesus was calling for the return of the soul to the kingdom of light, the end of the demiurge's domain. This wasn't a prayer for worldly order. It was a revolutionary whisper against the throne of matter. Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. In the Gnostic view, this is the great realignment, the restoration of the divine pattern in the material realm, where the lost fragments of spirit begin to reflect their true source. When your inner world mirrors the higher heaven, the demiurge loses his grip. Then comes a line that seems ordinary but hides a deep message. Give us this day our daily bread. They said this bread is not physical food, but the living knowledge, gnosis, that nourishes the soul. To ask for it is to request the light of understanding that dissolves illusion, the true sustenance of eternal life. And when Jesus said, "Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors," the word debts was seen as karmic weight, the spiritual chains created by ignorance and attachment. To forgive is not simply to pardon others. It is to dissolve the cords that tie us to this world of suffering. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The Gnostics believed this evil referred not just to moral weakness, but to the pull of the archons, the forces that keep humanity asleep, addicted to matter, fear, and false promises. To be delivered from evil is to wake up from the hypnotic dream of the demiurge's world. And finally, for thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. To the outer listener, this sounds like praise. But to the awakened one, it's a declaration that the true kingdom does not belong to the rulers of this earth. It belongs to the eternal source, the Father beyond time, whose light no system can extinguish. When read this way, the Lord's Prayer becomes a hidden map, a sequence of awakenings. Each line guides the soul through layers of illusion, from matter to spirit, from forgetfulness to remembrance. So the next time you whisper this prayer, imagine it not as a request, but as a key, one that unlocks a door that the world has long forgotten exists. Have you ever felt that ancient familiarity when you say these words? As if you're remembering something you once knew? Leave your thoughts below, because in the next part, we'll uncover how and why this secret meaning was buried for centuries. Imagine for a moment that you are living in the 1st century. The followers of Jesus are scattered, frightened, and divided. Some gather in secret caves and whisper of visions, of a Christ made of light, who came not to conquer nations, but to wake souls. Others preach in public squares that Jesus was the Messiah sent by the Creator of the world. Two visions of Christ begin to collide. One, radiant and inner, a Redeemer who came from the realm beyond the stars to liberate us from the God of this world. The other, earthly and institutional, a Savior who died to reconcile humanity with that same God. For nearly a century, both versions coexisted. The Gnostic communities flourished from Egypt to Syria, preserving what they called the secret teachings. In the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and especially the Apocryphon of John, Jesus speaks of the demiurge, the blind ruler who thinks himself the only God, and of Sophia, the divine feminine wisdom who fell from the fullness of light and gave birth to the world's imperfection. These teachings were never meant to create a new religion, but to ignite remembrance, a gnosis that burns quietly inside every being. To the Gnostics, salvation wasn't earned through belief or obedience, but through awakening. The Divine Father didn't demand sacrifice. He wanted recognition. The true prayer was not to beg, but to remember. But to the rising church, this was dangerous. The idea that every person carried a divine spark and didn't need priests or rituals to reach God threatened the entire structure of control. A church built on hierarchy could not survive a Christ who lived inside each soul. And so the campaign began. Around the year 180 CE, Bishop Irenaeus of Lyon wrote against heresies, a massive work aimed at erasing the Gnostics from memory. He labeled them deceivers, accusing them of worshiping false gods. The texts that spoke of the demiurge, the hidden Father, and the secret meanings of Jesus' words were systematically destroyed. For centuries, it seemed that the Gnostic Jesus had vanished. Only the approved version remained, the obedient Son of the Creator, whose mission was to build a church, not to reveal a prison. The Lord's Prayer became the perfect example of this rewriting. Its hidden rebellion turned into a symbol of submission, but truth has a way of surviving. In 1945, near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, a group of farmers unearthed a sealed jar buried in the sand. Inside were 13 ancient codices containing 52 texts, the lost Gospels of the Gnostics. For the first time in nearly 2 millennia, the forgotten voice of Jesus returned, not as a lawgiver, but as a revealer of divine memory. And in those texts, the Gnostics spoke again of the same prayer, a cry of rebellion against the false God who rules the material world, a call to awaken the divine spark imprisoned in human flesh. Ask yourself, if this knowledge was so false, why was it buried, hunted, and burned with such fury? Why did the church erase not only the texts, but the very idea that humanity could awaken without its permission? Because knowledge is liberation, and liberation cannot be controlled. Long before time was counted, before the stars were hung in the sky, there was only Pleroma, the realm of fullness, where all beings existed in harmony within the infinite light of the true Father. This was not a place, but a state of pure consciousness, radiant, perfect, beyond all duality. Within that divine harmony lived countless emanations of the Source, called eons, each representing a divine aspect of the unknowable God. Among them was Sophia, whose name means wisdom. She was luminous, creative, and filled with the desire to know the Father more deeply. But this desire, born in love, turned into yearning, a longing to create on her own without her divine counterpart. And so she projected a thought, an image, a spark of creation that left the fullness prematurely. That impulse gave birth to something imperfect, something outside the realm of light. The Gnostic texts describe this event as the fall of Sophia. From her divine essence emerged a being unlike any before, Yaldabaoth, the first of the archons, the demiurge. He was powerful, yet blind. He did not see the light from which he came. In his ignorance, he looked around at the shadowy realm that surrounded him and proclaimed, "I am God, and there is no other beside me." That was the first lie. From this arrogance, he shaped the material universe, a reflection of the divine world, but distorted, limited, and heavy. He surrounded himself with lesser beings, the archons, and together they formed the planetary spheres, trapping the fragments of divine light, the souls of humanity, inside bodies of matter. To the Gnostics, this was the tragedy of creation. What religion calls the beginning of the world was in truth the beginning of captivity. Humanity was formed not by the true Father, but by the servants of a false one. Though the spark of Sophia, her light and compassion, was secretly woven into every soul. That spark is the part of us that still remembers where we came from. It is the whisper that says, "This world is not your home." Sophia, realizing her mistake, cried out to the higher realms for help, and the true Father responded, not with wrath, but with mercy. From the fullness came a Redeemer, a being of pure light, to descend into the shadow and awaken the lost sparks. That being was called Christ. In this story, Jesus is not merely a man sent to found a religion. He is the living embodiment of the divine mind, entering the prison of matter to remind the captives of their origin. Every miracle, every parable, every word he spoke, especially the Lord's Prayer, was a code meant to awaken Sophia's children from their sleep. When he taught us to say, "Our Father, who art in heaven," he was not addressing the creator of the physical world, but calling to the source beyond the demiurge's illusion. Each prayer, each act of love, each moment of awareness is a signal, a vibration that shakes the chains of the archons and draws the soul closer to the light. But Sophia's fall also left a wound, a feminine absence that the world still feels. The Church later silenced her completely, erasing the divine feminine from theology. Yet in the Gnostic vision, Sophia's journey mirrors our own, the descent into matter, the forgetfulness, and the awakening through knowledge. It means that redemption is not punishment, but remembrance. That salvation is not obedience, but awakening. That God is not outside us, but buried beneath the illusions of flesh and fear. This is the meaning that has been hidden in plain sight. And when Jesus defied the God of this world, he was not attacking religion. He was freeing the divine wisdom that still sleeps in humankind. Sophia's light is still calling, and every time you remember that you are more than this body, more than this world, you are answering her call. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that quiet knowing that your soul came from somewhere far beyond this place? That faint homesickness for the divine? That is Sophia remembering through you. To most believers, prayer is submission, a bowing of the head before divine authority. But to the Gnostics, the Lord's Prayer was not a surrender. It was a weapon, a coded act of rebellion against the cosmic powers that rule this world, the archons. The Gnostic texts describe these archons as the guardians of illusion. They control thought, desire, and fear, ensuring that humanity remains asleep. They feed on attention, on the energy of suffering, on the endless cycle of longing and disappointment. Their greatest victory is not war or death, but distraction, keeping the human soul too busy, too afraid, too numb to remember its true home. Jesus, they said, came to expose them. Every parable was a revelation wrapped in story, every act of healing a symbol of liberation from the forces that bind the soul. But the most subtle and powerful of his teachings was the Lord's Prayer, a formula disguised as devotion that disarms the archons each time it is spoken with awareness. Think of it this way. Each line of the prayer reclaims a piece of divine authority from the false ruler of this world. When you say, "Our Father, who art in heaven," you are refusing the lordship of the demiurge. You are declaring allegiance to the source beyond his reach. When you whisper, "Thy kingdom come," you are calling for the return of the realm of light, a revolution not of blood, but of consciousness. When you breathe, "Deliver us from evil," you are naming the unseen forces that thrive in ignorance and stripping them of power by recognizing them. The archons rule through secrecy. To know their names, to see their patterns, is to undo their control. That's why, for the Gnostics, knowledge was salvation, not intellectual study, but inner remembrance. The Church later simplified this to faith. Believe, and you will be saved. But belief without awakening still feeds the system. Blind obedience is the language of the demiurge. True faith, the Gnostics said, is seeing through the illusion and remembering the light within. This is why Jesus was feared by both Rome and the religious authorities. He wasn't a political threat. He was a metaphysical one. His words dismantled invisible hierarchies, teaching that every person carried within them the spark of the Divine Father. No temple, no priest, no offering could control that. The moment people realized their inner light, the whole power structure, both earthly and cosmic, began to crumble. And so the Lord's Prayer was preserved, but reinterpreted. The Church kept the outer form, stripped of its inner meaning. What was once a secret weapon became a ritual, but the power never left. It simply went unnoticed. When you pray consciously, with awareness of who you're addressing, not the God of control, but the Father of light, the vibration of your words changes. The prayer becomes a tuning fork that aligns your soul with the higher realms. The archons, whose strength lies in confusion, begin to lose hold. You may have felt this before, that strange sense of peace, clarity, or quiet rebellion that comes when you pray not out of fear, but out of remembrance. That's the moment the prison walls tremble. And perhaps this is what Jesus meant when he said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." The truth was not an idea, but a frequency, one that could shatter the illusions of the rulers of this age. Some scholars even suggest that the rhythmic structure of the Lord's Prayer was intentional, designed to create resonance between the human voice and the divine pattern. It's less a speech and more a vibration of liberation. The demiurge created the world through the word, a false word that bound spirit to matter. Jesus countered with another word, the true vibration of the Father that frees what was bound. The Lord's Prayer is that vibration. And when you understand this, praying becomes no longer a ritual of obedience, but a conscious act of spiritual rebellion, a daily declaration that your soul belongs not to this world, but to the infinite light beyond it. So the next time you say these words, feel them not as a request, but as a command to awaken. Every phrase is a sword of light in the dark kingdom of the archons. Have you ever felt that prayer could change not just emotion, but reality itself? That words could pierce through invisible barriers? Tell me below, because in the next revelation, we'll uncover how this battle between light and darkness continues inside every human being, every single day. The ancient Gnostics said that the greatest battle between good and evil does not rage in heaven or on earth. It takes place inside each human being. Every day, every thought, every emotion becomes a small echo of that cosmic war that began when Sophia's light was trapped in matter. We are the battlefield. The demiurge built his prison not only in the sky or the stars, but in the human mind. Through fear, guilt, and desire, he planted a shadow copy of himself inside us, a false voice that says we are unworthy, small, and powerless. The archons, those invisible forces of control, whisper through this inner machinery. They turn divine beings into anxious consumers, seekers of approval, slaves to opinion, time, and survival. That's why Jesus' message was not simply about external salvation. It was about awakening the inner light. The kingdom of God is within you, he said. But how could the kingdom of God exist within the same flesh that the demiurge created? The Gnostics answered, because Sophia's spark, her luminous essence, lives hidden inside every heart, waiting to be remembered. This is where the Lord's Prayer becomes an inner journey. Each line is not directed outward, but inward. When you say, "Our Father, who art in heaven," you are turning your awareness toward the higher consciousness that dwells beyond thought. You are not looking up to the sky. You are looking inward and upward at the same time, to the heaven that opens inside your own being. Thy kingdom come. The Gnostics believed this was not a plea for divine intervention, but an invocation, a calling forth of the forgotten light already inside us. The moment you remember your divine origin, even for a second, the kingdom of light begins to manifest through you. But the archons resist that remembrance. They create noise, emotional turmoil, endless distraction, self-doubt. They feed on that confusion because every second you forget who you are, their system grows stronger. That's why real prayer, conscious prayer, is an act of rebellion. It's not passive. It's dangerous. Every time you center yourself in silence and recall your true source, you starve the archons of energy. Have you noticed how the world seems designed to keep you too busy to be silent, too tired to look inward? That is no coincidence. The archons work through systems, media, even through culture, anything that replaces inner knowledge with external authority. They want you to look everywhere but within. Jesus' defiance was to point humanity back toward the inner Father, not the God of institutions. To tell people that they could find the light without permission. And that's why he was crucified, not only by men, but by the very system that feeds on ignorance. His resurrection, to the Gnostics, symbolized not just life after death, but the soul's victory over the powers of this world. When you understand this, prayer becomes transformation. Each time you forgive, you dissolve one chain. Each time you remember your divine origin, one archon loses his grip. Each act of compassion, awareness, or truthfulness strengthens Sophia's light within you and weakens the realm of illusion. The true war of heaven is not fought with swords or angels. It's fought in consciousness, through remembrance, through gnosis. The Lord's Prayer is your daily training, a ritual of reconnection to the true Father. And this is why Jesus said that even if you had faith as small as a mustard seed, you could move mountains. Because those mountains are not rocks. They are the inner walls of the prison, the false beliefs that separate you from the light. If you've ever felt torn between two voices, one calling you toward peace, the other toward fear, that is the war within. One voice belongs to the Father of light, the other to the ruler of shadows. And every prayer, every choice of awareness, strengthens one side or the other. So ask yourself now, which kingdom are you serving in this moment? The kingdom of light that frees, or the kingdom of fear that binds? The answer is not found in doctrine, but in the quality of your awareness, the vibration of your heart, and the intention behind your words. When you pray, you are not reaching upward to a distant God. You are reaching inward to awaken the divine consciousness already burning quietly within you. That is the lost meaning of the Lord's Prayer. And if you've listened this far, perhaps you already feel it, that flicker of ancient recognition. That is the real miracle. Tell me below, do you feel that inner spark, that quiet knowing that you are more than flesh, more than name, more than history? Because in the final revelation, we will uncover how remembering this truth can liberate not only your soul, but the world itself. For 2,000 years, the world has prayed to a God it barely knows. We have been taught to bow our heads, to ask, to fear, to obey. But few have stopped to ask, who are we really speaking to? If Jesus' true mission was to defy the God of this world, then his greatest act was not the crucifixion itself, but the awakening he set in motion. The Gnostics said, his message was never meant to build walls of religion, but to tear them down, to remind each soul that the Divine Father, the true source, does not sit on a throne of clouds or gold. He lives in the silence behind your heartbeat. The Lord's Prayer was his way of smuggling the truth into history, a message hidden in plain sight, every word a spark of rebellion, every phrase a rope tossed down from the higher realms, inviting us to climb back home. But most of humanity still prays to the false creator, thinking him the true one. We seek comfort from the same system that traps us. We beg for miracles from the same forces that feed on our fear. The demiurge does not need believers. He needs sleepers. The awakening begins when you dare to ask the forbidden question. What if the God I was taught to fear is not the true Father I was born to know? This question doesn't destroy faith. It purifies it. It burns away the illusion so the pure gold of spirit can shine through. That is the essence of gnosis. Not rebellion for its own sake, but the return of remembrance. Jesus' defiance was not hatred. It was love in its highest form, love that refuses to let the children of light remain in darkness. He faced the archons not with violence, but with truth. He broke their codes with compassion, their laws with freedom, their lies with silence. And when he taught us the Lord's Prayer, he gave us the same power, the ability to realign with the true Father beyond the stars, the Father of light, who never demanded sacrifice, only awakening. To understand this prayer is to realize that you are part of Sophia's redemption story. You are her light scattered in the material world, remembering itself through human eyes. Every act of awareness, every moment of compassion, is the divine feminine rising again through you. That is what frightens the archons the most, a human being who remembers. Because the moment you remember, you stop feeding the machine. You become a sun, radiating light instead of absorbing fear. And perhaps that is why Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." Not because we are perfect, but because we carry a hidden spark of the divine, the same spark that can outshine the false god who has ruled for ages. So when you pray, don't repeat the words as a ritual. Feel them. Let each line awaken something ancient inside you. When you say, "Our Father, who art in heaven," feel the distance collapse. The heaven is already within you. When you say, "Deliver us from evil," see the veils of illusion thinning. When you whisper, "Thy kingdom come," know that it is arriving through your own awareness, your own remembrance. And when the final amen leaves your lips, let it not be an ending, but a return. A return to who you were before the world taught you to forget. Because the true rebellion is not against religion or society, it's against forgetfulness. The moment you awaken, the demiurge loses power. The prison dissolves, not by destruction, but by light. If you've reached this far, you are already part of something greater, the movement of remembrance. Every view, every comment, every shared word is another spark igniting in the darkness. So if this message resonated with you, don't let it fade. Leave a comment below. Tell us what line of the Lord's Prayer speaks to your soul in a new way now. Subscribe to this channel and keep the search alive, because together we are rebuilding the forgotten temple, not of stone, but of consciousness. And before you go, ask yourself this: if Jesus defied the God of this world to awaken humanity, then what would it mean for you to finally awaken too? Perhaps the true kingdom he spoke of is not coming. It is remembering itself through you.